Bom, a gente vai dar continuidade, então, agora com a conferência do professor doutor Mário Piragibe, da professora doutora Cariad Astles. Eu gostaria só de fazer uma pequena apresentação, né? Todos já devem conhecer, mas enfim, fazer um protocolo bonito. Cariad é doutora, é diretora do curso de bacharelado em Teatro de Bonecos do Royal Centre School of Speech and Drama da Universidade de Londres, professora também da Universidade de Exeter e também é colaboradora já há alguns anos da revista Moin Moin. Ela publicou um belíssimo artigo na revista Moin Moin, número 16, que fala sobre pesquisa. Ela, inclusive, tem uma fala dela que eu coletei aqui, que eu acho muito bonito, eu gostaria de ler, que está na revista Moin Moin, número 16, onde ela fala que o teatro de bonecos é uma forma de arte teatral radical que tem uma capacidade única de trabalhar através das fronteiras, de conectar o incomum, o inusitado, o peculiar e o popular. E ela ainda diz algo que eu acho muito inspirador, que o teatro de bonecos é uma arte obscena e séria. Bom, e Mário Piragibe é professor, doutor da Universidade Federal de Uberlândia. Eu tenho o prazer de conhecer já ele há algum tempo, né? Não vou dizer quanto tempo, mas há algum tempo já, através da companhia PECOD, na qual ele atuava. Nós já tivemos a oportunidade de fazer alguns intercâmbios entre as companhias, né? A PECOD, a Caixa do Elefante, que era a companhia que eu atuava em 2011, né? Foi o nosso encontro Rumos Itaú. E o Mário também tem uma tese que é muito inspiradora, que fala a respeito da presença no teatro de bonecos contemporâneo. É uma referência que eu costumo utilizar com os alunos também, e um material muito denso. Vale a pena consultar, acho que está disponível online também, né, a tese, na Universidade, na Federal de Uberlândia. Ok. Bom, então, passo a palavra aos nossos... Não?
A tese está na Unirio, né?
A tese está no... ok, então, corrigindo, a tese do Mário Piragibe está disponível na Biblioteca Universitária, então online, da Unirio. Passo, então, a palavra para os conferencistas. I start?
Shall I start? This is a game. So,
I don't know.
thank you for coming back. It has been a really long day, and it's been a really packed conference. And it's at the end of the day, and we're all a little bit tired, and this is the last presentation. So, we are hoping to have a bit of fun. Not that we didn't have fun already. We had a lot of fun already. But this is a dialogue and a game. Last year, when Mario and I we were talking about this conference, and I suggested, why don't we start a dialogue? We just start writing to each other about directing for puppet theatre. And he said, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. So for 5 months or something, we have been writing to each other about directing in puppet theatre and the relationship of training for directing in puppet theatre. We have got no answers for you. We have got a lot of questions, and this is an open game that we are inviting you to participate in, and sometimes we will invite you to participate physically in this game. We don't always agree. We argue, we disagree, and we are not really sure what we're going to say. We have got 10,000 words or something here, but we are not going to repeat these words. We're just going to talk as though we are in dialogue with each other. So, Mario, would you like to explain the slides?
To explain the slides?
Yeah, what they are.
Oh, well, you see, a sequence of slides in which we say a number of questions that we came up to along our conversation. During this 5 or so months of conversation, we could come up with tons of different questions, but we agreed to close into 9 main questions. So
It was supposed to be 8 questions, but they wouldn't stay still.
yeah, the questions as the puppets were rebellious to us. So we're trying to organize this whole conversation in terms of this sequence of questions.
So don't say too much about the questions.
Okay.
Because we're going to talk about the questions later.
Later on, yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
So what can we say, Mario, about directing for puppet theatre? Puppet theatre is already a slippery, cheeky, mischievous, difficult to categorize area of work. So it seems that it's no accident that we've arrived at this point where there is very little that is written about directing for puppet theatre. And there has been, until now, very little that has been discussed or said that goes some way towards explaining what this job is, what this thing is, how we can direct for puppet theatre. We are educators, we are puppeteers, we are educators. We are occasional directors and occasional performers of puppet theatre. But we're also trying to understand how we can pass on skills, how we can share ideas, how we can open up questions about directing for puppet theatre. But the whole process of this discussion and the whole process, I think, also of this conference is slippery, rebellious, unreliable, uncategorizable, unwilling to cooperate. We are grappling with the uncategorizable, the thing that doesn't want to be named, the thing that doesn't want to be tied down in some way. I know that there are, mainly in Russia and in Eastern Europe, I know that there are 4- and 5-year university courses dedicated to directing for puppet theatre. I work with young directors who are keen to understand the processes necessary for putting puppets on stage, but I'm still often left without instructions, without steps, trying to find a way of expressing this strange hybrid, exciting, fascinating thing that it is. Training in performance skills isn't the same as training and directing for puppet theatre, is it? Because we've heard a lot about training in performance as well as directing in this conference.
Yeah.
We should define our fields.
Yeah, I think we should. But the more we talked about it, the more we reach the more questions than actual answers about that.
But there are a lot of kinds of directors in puppet theatre.
Yeah.
What kinds?
Well, I guess there's the first kind of director, which is a composer of space. There's also another kind of director for puppeteer, which is a teacher trainer of puppeteers. There is another kind of director for puppeteer, which is the puppeteer itself. There's another kind of director for puppetry, which is a theatrical director in itself.
Is this a job in Brazil, this idea of being a puppet theatre director? Is that a job?
I don't think so. We got a couple of puppetry directors, but most of all, we have puppetry creators.
Because we got directors who make their own shows, or creators.
Yeah.
We got directors who are commissioned to make shows. We've got directors who go into a live theatre show and they direct the puppetry.
Yeah.
We've got those who direct somebody else's vision or somebody else's idea. We've got directors who work with text, who work solo, who adapt. We've got devising directors,
Yeah.
ensemble directors. How can we bring all these ideas together to pass something on to students?
Yeah, this is a really tricky thing. How can we reach a series of advices, a series of guidelines in order to define what, first of all, what is the puppetry director? What does he do? And most of all, how can we teach somebody in order to occupy this kind of job?
Some people have said that directing is having something to tell and finding the best way to tell it. But I'm not sure even if this is the starting point. Something about telling how we feel or how we respond to something are other starting points. When I watch shows by Gentil or Ingrid Aspelli or Fabrizio, amongst many, I don't always know what they have told me, but I know what they have made me feel. When I watched Theodora's video yesterday, I knew the overall theme, but I was more struck by how I felt having been shown this. Making performance can be a phenomenological experience, more than something to tell, opening up an idea, expressing ourselves, inviting audiences to share with us in something. For example, this idea about conflict that we heard about this morning. I found the presentation by Elmira Kurilenko very interesting. But I'm not sure that conflict is always a starting point for puppets. For sure, puppets have got conflict and they enter into conflict. But it struck me that perhaps the puppet is more about a desire for something than about conflict. The puppet on stage desires something. Would you agree with this?
Well, I think that a puppet is a dramatic experience in itself. So whenever you have a puppet on stage, there's some kind of dramatic quality that it's drawn to the whole space around it. In this sense, we can get some kind of dramaticity, we can get some kind of theme by simply putting a puppet on stage. There's some kind of narrative quality to the material. There's some kind of dramatic essence to the mere dealing with the objects and the colors and the feelings they portray.
Should we be having the slideshow?
I guess not yet, but let me try. Whoa!
Take it away. We don't want them to see all
Yeah,
the
we don't need this right now. Yeah.
But the images.
Oh, the images. So, Amanda, please roll on the slideshow.
So, what is the difference between a puppet theatre director and a puppet theatre creator, maker, author, auteur, writer, dramaturg, deviser, shaper, finisher, creative genius? We have heard much about composition, dramatic writing, finding your own voice, finding the path, enabling and facilitating individual creation, about collage, narrative, process, dialogue, objects, and a fair bit about meaning. In some way, we're looking for this grammar, a structure for training in directing, some kind of notation, rules. We don't really have a tradition of puppet theatre directing in the UK. A few people work as puppet theatre directors, and there are lots of puppeteers who direct or create their own shows. But we have got this catch-all phrase, puppetry practitioner. Puppetry practitioners are often called into shows to direct the puppets, which sometimes means to train the puppeteers, to assist in the performance of the puppets. There are a lot of outside eyes who work with performing puppeteers, who require someone to assist with the directing. There are directors of live theatre who like to have a go with puppets. But this role of puppet theatre director is often a very rare and unusual thing. So if we're thinking about pedagogy, as we're in Brazil, and because he's already been mentioned in this conference, I'm going to turn to Paulo Freire again for these essential questions. What knowledge and skills about directing for puppet theatre are worth learning? And secondly, where does this knowledge exist? How is it acquired? And rather than telling you what we think, we're going to try and co-create this according to Freire. And I'm going to quote Freire again, who says, not of puppetry, but we can think about it in relation to puppetry. When I understand an object, rather than memorizing the profile of the object, I know that object and I produce the knowledge of that object. The reader, or in this case the puppeteer or puppet director, becomes co-author of the meaning of the object. Let's continue with Freire for a moment. He says of humans, what is a human? But let's translate to puppets. What is a puppet? How does a puppet differ from other species? What are the limits of puppetry potential? So passing on to our questions then, Mario, what is the meaning of directing for puppet theatre? Question number one.
Question number one. Please, Amanda, go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Right. So,
this is not how do you direct for puppet theatre. This is what is the meaning of directing for puppet theatre.
yeah, and we think that this should be a really first question to follow, because almost every question about this we came up tended to end or to lean towards this first one question, and I came with some words like this. I guess that this is the bigger question we are dealing with here, because it is likely that directing for puppetry is an activity focused on searching for meanings of putting puppets on stage, also finding ways to set in motion such meanings by putting puppets or whatever follows on stage. It's such an important word for us, meaning that points to meaning. I'll begin again. It's such an important word for us, meaning, that points to several fundamental directions, which enables us to discuss from dramaturgy to teaching techniques and professional ethics. I can't address to this question overlooking how it pushes me towards the reflection to a kind of hermeneutic, semantic consideration of the puppet on stage. Let me think. Authors like Tillis, about creation and control, and Bansky, talking about social satire, and Ferry, comes to my mind. Bansky's identification of a couple of main themes talks mostly about playwriting, and Tillis investigates the phenomenon of the puppet performance. I guess both approaches make some sort of contact with the mise-en-scène issues, because it boils up to how puppets are shown on stage and how the audience is expected to perceive them. So I guess there are some approaches we can mention in order to discuss the meanings that emerge when you have puppets on stage. I think it's unavoidable to be caught in the game of alive, not alive, suggested by the simplest puppet play. Manipulation on site highlights relations of creation, freedom, power, violence between individuals, and individuals as they face power such as nature, collective structures, idea, and so on. This is kind of political, isn't it? I'm saying that the on-site manipulator has a way to highlight these relations, but I think it's also valid when the puppeteer is hidden or plays no active part in the action. Well, Tillis points out how the double vision effect is useful for discussion matters of creation and control with puppets that are useful for deepening contact with existential and political themes. In my opinion, puppets can be far more competent than living actors in such displays. But I guess that the discussion begins to reach its central point as we report to the thematic analysis of Bansky. Fantastic and satire are different portrayals of existential conditions that are outside regular humanity, both physical and socio-political. For me, puppets are always moving away from the regular semblance of human condition to show humanity in its rawest, deepest phase. It makes me assume that puppets have been used to talk about human condition in political, psychological, and metaphysical ways in depth and straight to the point. They can discuss our physical boundaries by subverting or adding attention to them in at least two basic ways. Being the first one, the ability to go beyond them by flying, enduring violence, and Miguel knows a lot about it. The second one, which could be taken as the opposite as at the first one, could be the frailty of his life as it's perceived. I mean, how a single step, a gaze, or reaction can be acknowledged as an awesome endeavor and not the simplest thing to be made or seen. And it adds considerable strength and meaning to the smallest actions and challenges, stepping back to give new light to the dilemmas and struggles of mere existence. This can be put in a social and political sense, but also in a metaphysical, holistic one. The puppet is outside law and society, in a sense very similar as it is outside physical order. And its power matches its helplessness, turning it into an interesting kind of jester. You know, so small, fragile, and easy to obliterate, it has safe pass to defy power and expose our worst flaws relentlessly. This matched strength and frailty is also related to how the puppet means, since I sometimes think of a puppet as something familiar to an ideogram or a haiku that balances simple form in a rich and complex meaning potential. I guess that's why we're frequently so deeply caught by simple, brief puppet appearances. I have heard a lot about puppet performances, usually lack more complex dramaturgy, being often poor and repetitive. Well, leaving aside the obvious fact that there's always plenty of uninspired material going around, and at the same time complex plots filling with long lines that do not get along with the use of puppets. In another hand, a single, not too complicated puppet being moved at the corner of a room or street, following a sequence of actions that barely shows a plot, may have the ability to conjure dramatic quality that is not just based on the simplicity of its acting movements, but that also adds this theatrical, dramatic quality to all of its surroundings.
So,
since the puppet sends us back to the very principles of...
What does this mean for the director?
What does it mean for the director? I think that, and this is an advice, no, I'll turn it into a question. Should a director add lots of plot, add lots of unnecessary tension to the play, if the mere appearance of the puppet in itself is for itself full of this urge for life, full of this strong dramaticity that lies in the very struggle of the puppet to be seen as something alive.
So does this mean, Mario, does this mean that the first question, or the first point, if you like, for the director of puppet theatre is to take a stance about this ontological meaning to a puppet's existence as a performer? In other words, does the director need to address this question of life and non-life, the lived and non-lived experience of the puppet on stage? If a puppet is a constructed being, a designed entity, or a symbol, then it suggests that to put the puppet on stage is already a kind of artifice. But my experience of puppetry, the phenomenological experience of puppetry, is a stark and startling experience of non-artificiality, but of reality in some way. So can a puppet even begin to tell a story with characters if what it's doing implicitly or explicitly is shouting, "Am I alive?" Can it even tell a story with characters if it doesn't even know this yet? Anna Ivanova talked about the puppet as existing more as a ritual being. I completely agree. And do you remember when we were in the workshop last October?
Yeah.
And Eloire Kwang said, the puppet is always a symbol of death.
Yeah.
Always a symbol of death. I'm not sure if it is always a symbol of death, but for me it is always a recollection of death. And you know that I am a little bit obsessed with this idea of the ghosting of the puppet, and how can the puppet be alive and ghosted at the same time? How can we recognize this? I'm alongside Cantor and Pasca and Dondero in all of these questions about whether the puppet should try to show that it is alive or whether it should show that it is also not alive. The experience, the illusion of life is always transitory with a puppet, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it is. And I guess it's a main subject for the very display of the puppet. I don't know if a director should always come up with stories about this kind of conundrum, this kind of dilemma, but I don't think it should be put aside. Yeah, I think it shouldn't be disconsidered. It's always there.
Maybe we should try something.
Okay.
We need some volunteers for this. We need 3 people. No, we need maybe 5 people.
5 people? 5? Quem vem?
5 people. You are all puppeteers. You are all professionals. We are not judging anyone's level of puppetry here. And we are also not doing a training workshop. So we just want to try something. Please come behind the table. Maybe we need some more people. Maybe 1 or 2 more people. So we are going to give you some puppets, and we would like you, in any way that you have been trained or in any way that you have already worked, we would like you to show life in the puppet. Allow the puppet to show life. Okay? We will give you 2 puppets.
Tá. Vocês vão pegar alguns bonecos e a função é mostrar vida no boneco.
This is one. You can join him on the puppet.
Pode manipular junto. Isso.
What about the other puppet? It's in the box. Yeah, you can join him on the crocodile, I think. Okay, great. So here we have some beautiful puppetry, puppets showing life. Now we're going to do something else. Stay there. Okay, let us say, just because we know this story, we know enough about it, that we are doing Romeo and Juliet.
Então vamos propor que estamos fazendo Romeo e Julieta.
It doesn't matter which way round. Doesn't matter which is Romeo and which is Juliet. We don't know. No. what we would like you to do now, in any way that you can, or in any way that you can try, is show that you have life, but that you also recollect death.
Ou seja, o exercício é mostrar que você está vivo, mas ao mesmo tempo trazer junto disso uma lembrança da morte.
At the same time, simultaneously. We don't know how to do this.
A gente não tem a menor ideia de como é que faz isso.
Remember, you are doing life and non-life at the same time.
Lembre-se que vocês estão atuando vida e não vida ao mesmo tempo.
Okay, let's pause it. Thank you. Stay here, please. Stay here.
Para pouquinho, mas continuem aí.
There is a big question for the puppet theatre director about where they stand on this continuum of life and death, or life and non-life. This is point 1 of the grammar that we have been talking about. Point 2, where does the puppet live? No. Which world does the puppet live in? The puppet lives in a different world from the human world. This is for sure, right? Mario?
Yes. I'm sorry, I was looking for the text here.
Where does the puppet live?
The puppet comes from a place of its own. The puppet comes a place from its own, and it's really important for us to know where does he come from.
The puppet world is not the human world, and the puppet world comes from another place. So the point 2 of this kind of grammar we're trying to create is to understand what this world is, to allow us a glimpse into that world. We can't know it because we're not of it.
Yeah.
To be able to surpass the very silly limits of the human body by flying, breaking, coming back together, having really long or strange arms or legs, 2 or 3 heads, for instance. These all seem very sensible ways of organizing a body to me. Why is the human body so limited? Philippe Choulet said to me this morning, because I have a prolapse disc in my back, he said, you have the misfortune of having a human body. Mm-hmm. And this is absolutely true. The puppet has got a different kind of body and comes from a different kind of world. So we would like to do a second exercise.
Yeah. We're trying to get some things like, what are the rules of these worlds? What is the shape of these worlds? Now, should we leave the building? All right. Run for your lives. But what are the rules of the world? What is the shape of this world? Eu vou dizer isso para vocês. Quais são as regras do mundo? Qual é a forma do mundo? I guess it has something to do with a writing technique of a fantasy novelist that always discuss about how to give materiality to the worlds created, and it usually has to do with paying attention to the smallest things belonging to cultural behavior structure and its coherence with the bigger picture, like how do people in this reality greet themselves, how do they eat, express love, etc. Ou seja, existe uma questão sobre normas de escrita, por exemplo, em literatura de ficção, que é como é que você estrutura o mundo. Quais são as pequenas questões em termos de natureza, em termos de cultura, de comportamento, que fazem com que essa estrutura interna, pequena, menor desse mundo seja crível, né?
So what we would like you to do for the second exercise, with each of your puppets, maybe one at a time, let's start with this puppet first and then the other one. We would like you to show us something about the world that you live in. Show us your world in some way, and show us what the rules are in that world. Yeah, and you can use the stool, the table, the boxes, the bags, the fabric, anything you like. The puppet's world. So in this world, boxes can fly. Everything can fly in this world. Let's not try to do too much. Let's just think this puppet knows its world. The puppet knows where it lives. It knows its world. I know we are improvising, but this is where it's very familiar. So in this world, the puppet has puppeteers that are confused. This is activity we're really familiar with already. We know that our puppets can do this, but it's really important for the puppet to know its world and to give us a bit of a peep into that world in some way. And the other thing that is happening here is that we understand that the physical condition of the puppet is different. It's again from a different world. The physical possibilities and limits of this puppet, or all of the puppets, are completely different.
Yeah, since the puppet is outside regular physical order, what are the rules of the world? In which order does it transit? In which order does it live?
So we have got 3 points so far, or 4 points in our grammar, I think. We have got, where is the puppet on the alive or non-alive spectrum? We have got, What is the world that is inhabited by this puppet?
Yeah.
We have got, what are the rules of that world? And the fourth one is, the puppet is somehow outside physical order. It has a different kind of physical relationship.
Yeah. Should we move on to the next question? Yeah, so let's go. Cariad, should we leave, say goodbye to these people, or should we leave them here? I don't know. They're quite, yeah.
Let's give them a clap.
So moving on to the next question, which is, does the director have to know how to make or how to move puppets to be a director of puppet theater? Well, I guess it's important to know how to relate with material. I'm not sure if puppet theater directors should have a full training for skills such as sewing, carving, or drawing. Drawing technique basics should be considered. But I think it could be useful to learn how to breathe when sewing, or how to weight the hand while carving wood, or how to learn about the material and about ourselves in the process, as Osvaldo Gabrielli so generously showed us in his workshop. The point is to develop some kind of acquaintance with materials and skills in order to set the creative mind on how to explore meanings through them and allow the inanimate to express properly. Build your own puppet could be a good single exercise for students, but for it allows you to deal with different materials and techniques, works to the meeting of methods and expressive addresses to the limitation of artists, and think, urges the student to try to communicate with the resources, shows that the building process is a dialogue or a dance, sometimes a fight. Anyway, how far can we go without sharing knowledge and experience? I believe that most of the times, good directing is all about knowing how to trust in the people working with you and give in.
I like this quote from Edith Ledikova, who said of post-traditional puppetry that it is a form of puppet theatre that deliberately engages with the elements of traditional puppet theatre dramaturgy, including inspiration, puppetry technique, and specific staging procedures. So what does it mean for the director to engage with elements of puppet theatre dramaturgy, inspiration, technique, and staging? What is an element of puppet theatre dramaturgy? I guess this relates to the things we already talked about, the use of artificial bodies, the use of material and object and type rather than the use of a unitary character, this sense of the other world, action rather than words in many cases, and the relationship between the immediacy of the puppet in action and its metaphysical conception of itself. Technique. That's a question. Framing devices, movement systems, appearances and disappearances, relationship to humans, where appropriate, how the puppet is animated. What should we teach then, trainee directors of puppet theatre?
Yeah, what is more important?
Is there a hierarchy of things? What would you put at the top?
Yeah. I guess for myself, I would put at the top the relationship with other people.
What about the visual sensibility? What about the explorations of visual art, scenography? What about, for example, what's more important? Is it more important for a director of puppet theatre to know about dance, or to know classical texts, including classical texts for puppetry? We have to make choices.
Yeah, because there's never enough time, there's never enough resources, there's never enough patience from the students, and something that is really, really, really important is how can you know what kind of people will come to be educated?
Do you think puppet theatre lends itself more to the devising or ensemble way of working? Because so much puppet theatre emerges from visual exploration and experimentation with materials. Or does it instead require, and these are not black and white, these are not poles, does it require precise action, movement, choreography, relationship, coexistence, codependence, the performers being directed as shapes, as geometry, in terms of visual choreography, as though they were things themselves? I mean, I've worked with both, as you know. I've worked with, as a performer, I've worked with directors that have left the performers to work out the choreography and the interaction, and then the emphasis was on this interaction between the things and the people, the things and the humans. And I've worked with directors who have told me exactly where to stand, which arm to move, where to stop moving that arm, which little finger to lift, and so on. And when I came out of my theatre training, I was a little bit shocked by this latter form of directing when I started to work, which was at the Little Angel Theatre, because I was accustomed to questioning and to relating and understanding the meaning of the piece. And I was just being told, do that because it looks good. And this phrase, it looks good, I have heard 1 million times in puppet theatre. And for sure, it often looks good, and that doesn't mean it doesn't have meaning. If it looks good, we understand something, we receive something from it, we respond to this, something looks good. But it's a little bit reductive.
Yeah, you introduced me to a really interesting director, which was Steve Tipalady. Yeah, and he has this way of working with the actors, with the puppets. And then he says, well, what do you think happens now? What would you like to do with the puppets? Let's do a play. Let's sing a song. And in the same time, Steve was leading his really young bunch of people, bunch of actors, of puppeteers, in order to be co-authors of the play, in terms of action, in terms of dramaturgy, in terms of how to occupy the space, in terms of how to build their own puppets. And this was a really interesting way of working. I can also quote another experience I had here in Brazil when I was kind of. It was previous to the beginning as a puppeteer in the Pequod company. There was the show that Miguel directed, which was called O Velho da Horta, the old man in the orchard, I can't translate it. My English doesn't come this far. So in the premiere, the play was so reduced to do what was written in the script, and as the play progressed, as the presentations progressed, the actors began to improvise with puppets, manipulated by 3 puppeteers at a time, and the improvisation grew and grew much more meaningful and funny, and so this play ended up as an actor's play, rather than a designed play. Well, I guess this is.
So I was thinking that we have been talking for something like 40 minutes. And we are told that 40 minutes is probably enough for talking. So you need a break. And also, I mentioned Paulo Freire, the co-creation of knowledge, and the fact that we are all here today with questions. So what we would like you to do, all of you, young and old puppeteers, trainee and experienced puppeteers, is make a manifesto of what you think directors of puppet theatre should be taught in their training and in their learning. We have got a big piece of paper, we have got some pens, and we would like you to come and put the one most important thing that you think directors of puppet theatre would need to learn. Is it clear? Okay, let's do that.
Yeah. How should we do this? Would you like to come here and write, or no? People suggest and I write it down. Yeah?
Whatever you prefer.
Yeah, sing. Music. Yeah, okay.
Shall I write two? It'll be quicker.
Like this. Music. Another pen. Yeah. What else?
What?
Affection.
Affection. What do you mean?
Sentiment. Emotion. Empathy. Yeah. The silence and the listening. Yeah. Play. Observation. Illusion. Yeah. Perception. Breath. Right. Memory.
Keep going. Remember, this is for directors, right? Directing puppet theatre.
Disattachment.
Disattachment. Distance or disattachment?
I guess disattachment. Yeah. Detachment.
Yeah. Yeah. Riesgo. Risk.
Doubt.
Keep going. This will be shared with all of you.
Forgetting. Oblivious.
It's easier for us to see if you just stick your hand up and then we can hear it. Any more? Sight, vision. Looking or sight? Looking? Listening.
Listen to the actors. Yeah.
Composition.
Synthesizing. Yeah.
How do you teach that?
Humanity.
Humanity.
No.
But this is really interesting because this goes back to John's question. Where is John? That John was asking Didier if anthropology should be included in training for directors. So now we have got humanity and empathy already in this manifesto. Anything else?
Language. Good communication. Amnesia. Amnesia.
This is one of the. This can be taught by this act of mimesis.
Interface. Patience. Patience. Oui. Paciencia. Patience. Boldness.
Boldness. we are all creating this. We are all creating this question. Cooking.
Cocinar la magia de la escena.
Cooking the magic of the stage or the scene.
Provocation.
And there was something over there. Thinking?
Ooh, I'm sorry.
Anything else?
Ability to dream and imagine.
Beautiful. Searching for what? Searching for what, Anna? Pain.
Pain.
Ow, ow, pain. Ow! Searching for pain. Yes, I agree.
Lecture des signes. Ah, reading of the signs, reading of signs.
Like a reader of signs.
Semiotics.
Like we are practical semiotics, I suppose.
Yeah. But I put
More? Any more?
empty the mind.
Emptying the mind.
Emptying the mind, yeah.
Openness. Openness.
Openness, yeah.
Quantum physics.
Quantum physics. Right.
Comenzar de cero. Comenzar de cero.
Arts history.
Starting from zero.
Inclusion. Oh.
Pasión.
Passion. Passion.
Pasión. Y placer.
Joy,
And pleasure.
Pleasure.
Oh, building the maps of the worlds of the marionettes. Yeah. Cartography. It's puppet cartography.
This is a great manifesto. I just want to be a little bit sort of provocative and push. Is there any kind of performing method or technique that you think because we have put a lot of human qualities here, which is very interesting. But should we include something about technique or movement systems or text analysis? Should we? I'm really happy not to, because this is what you are saying, but should we include any study of directors of the stage, directors of the puppet stage? And viewpoints.
Yeah. Yeah.
History of puppet theatre. Should the director know this?
Juggling.
Magic. Tradition. To defy gravity. Challenge gravity.
Oh.
Analysis of text and interpretation or interpretação or acting, performing. Awareness of space. Knowledge of the body.
Bodily awareness, yeah. Mimic and dance.
But it's quite, this is, as an anthropological process in itself, it's interesting that we started with human qualities and now we are going to technical performing processes. Kind of technical knowledge?
Technical knowledge of the marionette. Okay.
So. Animation, manipulation. Clowning. Composition.
Mechanics. Right.
I'm just going to check the time because we are got a lot of other things to
Lighting, light design, light and sound design. Ethics. All right.
Okay. So the next question is the same one. How do you direct puppet theatre? Garcia Lorca told us that the puppet does not want to be directed. The director says in the puppet play of Don Cristobal, Don Cristobal, get on stage. Don Cristobal says, I'm peeing. The director says, no, Don Cristobal, you have to get married. Don Cristobal says, get married? I'm going to the bullfight. So we know that the puppet doesn't want to be directed in the traditional sense of directing.
Well, there's another example that I remember that's from Ilo Krugli from Storia di Lenses Eventus, when the kids want to play with the puppets and the puppets lock themselves inside a chest. And so they have to come up with a play with pieces of newspaper. So it shows us how rebellious puppets tend to be, and they always are. And it's good for puppets to be rebellious.
I'm very interested in this word that you've raised a couple of times in our conversations, and this leads me to the next phase in this grammar that we're trying to create. Instability. The puppet is unstable. And this is part of its power. In those wonderful videos that Didier was showing us earlier on, we saw puppets made of ice. This is an unstable material because it will melt and disappear. And that is exactly what happens in Anywhere, the performance. I've forgotten her name, from Teatro de l'Entrouvert. The puppet is unstable. It exists in another place with different rules and different senses of stability. It is incredibly unstable because we don't know what those rules are all the time. The body of the puppet is unstable. It can be destroyed, or it can die, or it can come apart. In performance terms, it can play any character, dutifully or rebelliously, however it chooses. So it always expresses some kind of uncertainty about existence and self. This is a dangerous and fragile phenomenon, so I think the director needs to be aware of this fragile and dangerous sense of working with the puppet. I was quite interested in something that Victor Molina said about the puppet, that it can't die, or it can only die when the puppet's body has been completely and definitively destroyed. If the puppet dies on stage, we know it can come back. But if the puppet's body is burnt, destroyed in some way, maybe it's dead then, maybe, I'm not sure. But it's unstable, and I think this question of instability is one of the powers of puppet theatre and makes us so fascinated by it.
Yeah, but there's a few words that could be said about the work of the director for itself. As it happens many times in any kind of theatre direction, there are a few, if not none at all, strict rules. As much as we find it plausible and also succeed in setting directing courses, one true remaining thing about directing for puppet theatre is that it is a difficult, personal task. Sometimes a particular and painful process you have to go through in front a lot of people who are counting on you. Irina said earlier in the meeting that the puppet director is a mix between a poet and an architect. So among many ways to understand it, it is a mixture of someone who works from its own intimacy and someone who needs the help of dozens of people to attend the needs of many others. So it's not just how you envision a play, but also how can you mobilize all different kinds of resources in order to reach but a glimpse of the original plan.
What about this question of, that you know is one of my other obsessions, this question of reverence, reverence for material, religious devotion, care, love. Actually, I was very excited that some people started talking about empathy and humanity in this manifesto, because for me, the puppet is returning to ritual. It's moving away from technique. It's returning to animism. We are no longer in a world, thank God, where the human being is ascendant and dominant over everything. We are returning to a world, I hope, where we are part of a web of things, where we depend on things, we depend on matter, we depend on nature, we depend upon each other. And this is a strength and not a weakness. We've been trained in some way to think of the puppet as a weak thing, a fragile thing, a vulnerable thing, because it needs to be helped. It needs to be given life. It needs to be supported by 1, 2, 3, sometimes many more manipulators and performers. But this also elevates it into a kind of strength. It's not that it's weak. It's that it has 4, 5, 10 attendants worshipping it. And I think we are returning to this power of the object, the material, the figure, the puppet, in relation to religious devotion. I've been talking recently about the exquisite sense of care and the exquisite sense of caressing that I experience when I'm performing with a puppet. But Mario, you said in a conversation that you're not the kind of person to treat a puppet like this.
Yeah, but I really remember one day when we were going back from the Exeter University, you were really not pleased about how people were treating the puppets and materials. But I have another thought on that. Sometimes to respect the material and the puppet is just make what must be made, to be iconoclastic and deal with the violence and instability it emanates. But that's not lack of love, that's still respect. Well, anyway, it's not easy. I guess it takes a great amount of sensibility and willingness to understand the puppet's needs. It can be hard to get this at a first glance, so a cautious and caring procedure is always advisable. I remember when we, oh yeah, I already said that. But
I remember we had a round table in London once. We had a discussion with puppeteers, and the title of the round table was "What Can the Puppet Teach the Actor?" And we had a number of rather important British puppet theatre practitioners and directors, and we had a lot of different opinions. Stephen Mottram, the expert marionettist, likened the puppet to a musical instrument. He said that it's a technical process. You learn the technical process, you learn anatomy, and you learn the qualities of this technical process, and when you are able to play the puppet, then it can fly. I don't mean it can fly, I mean it can do what it wants. But in that same conversation, the director of Improbable Theatre, Phelim McDermott, disagreed. He said there is no place for technique because we don't need to play the puppet well. He talked about this idea that we should not be reverent about the puppet, we should be irreverent about the puppet. I've seen a lot of puppetry which has got apparently, seems to have ridiculous, casual handling, which is breathtaking in its frame breaking, and this is often what traditional puppetry is based on, not casual handling, but the appearance of casual handling. Yeah. And I think that even in this subversive and silly handling, there's a kind of reverence for the material, which goes back to the puppet in its mystique, that it's something beyond, it captures that mystique. It can pray and it can fart at the same time.
Well, I guess that in the end, there's a huge difference between treating a puppet with violence and treating a puppet with disregard. Yeah, with lack of attention. Well, Here's the story I was looking for, and this is a really good one. Neville Trenta once told that he was directing this actress, which was not a puppeteer, and he had to manipulate a puppet. And the play and Trenta was directing her, and he said that she treated the puppet with such reverence and such care and caution that the scene already began long before the manipulation began, because she approached the material with such reverence and caution that the scene it was set already. And this is a nice thing to think about.
Shall we ask the next question?
Absolutely.
You know, this is not an interesting question for me. Let's think about our conversation on Thursday. When I'm asked this question, I think I have been here already. But let's ask the audience. So, how many puppets do you think there are in the world? Okay, it's a stupid question. So, how many potential puppets are in the world? Okay, we know that puppets are not in the world. So let's think, how many potential puppets are there out of the world? Everything is a puppet.
Everything can be a puppet. You were saying that I really love this thing that you say about the ghosting of the puppet. Yeah. And there's the kind of immaterial world where there are these ghosts floating around, and they can inhabit the material from time to time, which makes almost everything become a puppet. The puppet for Cariad, and I really love this view of her, is some kind of haunted element.
The puppet is haunted for me. I mean, we know that there is nothing in the world that is impossible to be a puppet. Nothing is not a puppet, unless nothing is a character, and then nothing is a puppet again. Yeah. But I have this view that the puppets are there all the time, and they're just waiting to inhabit the material we offer for them. We don't make puppets, but we host them, and then we ghost them. Yeah. They arrive, and then they leave. Of course, we know the definition by Proshan that the puppet is a material image of humans, animals, or spirits that are created, displayed, or manipulated in narrative or dramatic performance. But that's a little bit old, that definition, and I'm not sure if it's enough to define a puppet. It's a question of potential. And then it asks the question why puppets should be on stage anyway. Next question.
Yeah, in my particular opinion, wherever a puppet is, there's a stage behind him.
Can a puppet be? But we can have puppets in museums, right?
Yeah.
But they are only puppets in museums because they have either in a state of having performed or in a state of could perform. Is that right?
Yeah,
Would you agree with that? So they only can be puppets in a museum if they have the potential of performance.
Yeah. I think that the puppet has this, I don't know, even in the museum, I don't know what kind of performance a puppet can do in a museum. But I still tend to think that when you look at a puppet, even if it's a museum, there's some kind of dramatic tension that, I don't know, the history of the material, the expression, the potential. Maybe you can transport all this action to inside your head, but I don't know, whenever I see a puppet, I see theater.
It's this, going back to this question of life and whether it's about life. Basil Jones from Handspring says the primary work of the puppet is the performance of life. You know that I'm not completely satisfied with this idea, but he says something later on that it's not just that it's the performance of life, it's the quest for life. And I would like to add something to this, that perhaps the puppet's primary purpose is not just the quest for life or to live, but to test out life. There's an incredible opera called The Emperor of Atlantis, written in Terezin concentration camp in 1943 by the composer Victor Ullmann. In this opera, the emperor abolishes death, but later on, seeing that this has not served him well, it's impossible to have a world without death, begs death to return. Death says he will own, and it is a he in the opera, Death says he will make a deal with him. He will only return if the emperor is the first to try him out. So puppets do this trying out. They try life out, but they don't always stay for long. There's a bit from the beginning of Ben Okri's book, The Famished Road, which says, "In the land of the beginnings, spirits mingled with the unborn. There were many amongst us who had returned from the world of the living. There was not one amongst us who looked forward to being born. We disliked the rigors of existence. We disliked the ignorance of our parents. We disliked the fact of dying." And I think puppets in some way are like this. They try out life, but they don't necessarily hang around. So I think puppets are on stage because they are trying out living for a bit. So, shall we start to round up?
To round up?
Shall we start to round up?
What is round up?
To come to a conclusion.
Yes, rounding up.
What is the task of the director? For me, the task of the director is to create a space for the spirits among us to inhabit the material of the puppets, to open up a container for poetry, politics, and purpose through these 6 things that we have talked about. This is just a suggestion, and we said we would give you no answers, and these are not answers, these are provocations. Life and non-life. Which world do they live in? What are the rules of this world? They are outside physical order as we understand it. They are ideograms or visual sentences. And number 6, they are unstable.
Yeah, and as for this finishing, as we were saying in the beginning, it all boils up to the first question of all: what does it mean to put puppets on stage? I guess that directing for puppetry must be something that takes into consideration that a puppet already carries a huge dramatic potential at its mere display. I am remembering when Patricia Gomes made that wooden puppet, the kid with the big eyes, sit closer to the audience and simply let it be where it was. And the eyes of the puppet screamed at us about how his longing to life right in front of us, partly a wooden figure playing with our imagination, and partly the memory of a dead kid.
We were going to do the second manifesto.
Yeah.
Shall we do the second manifesto?
I guess.
Yeah? Do we have
time? I don't know.
I think it would be interesting.
Yeah.
We want to do a second manifesto, but this time it's not you that's telling us, it's what we would like. We would like to give you these training puppets, these that are here in this university, and we would like the puppets to tell us what they want to tell the directors. Okay? What do the puppets want to tell the directors? And we will do the same thing.
Yeah. So who wants to take part in this particular effort? The puppets are here. Whoever wants a puppet to make a puppet tell us what does he want for the director to be trained, please raise your hand and we'll provide you a puppet. Okay?
I think everyone is very tired. the puppet can tell us what to write, or if you prefer, the puppet can tell the puppeteer what to tell us to write.
O boneco pode dizer o que ele quiser, ou o boneco pode contar para o bonequeiro o que ele quer, e aí o bonequeiro responde para a gente. Essas duas coisas podem valer. We follow the same instructions. A puppeteer raises his hand.
What does the puppet want to tell the
Yeah.
director to do?
This one.
This puppet. Que dizer? Sensibilidade. Sensitivity.
Keep your hands out of me and give me freedom.
Freedom.
Que mais?
Ele me disse que quer conhecer os alunos da periferia.
He wants to meet the students from the periphery, of Rio de Janeiro. No, the periphery.
Thinking.
Ele quer ser escutado.
He wants to be heard.
Puppet wants to be heard.
Yeah. Balance.
The puppet wants to be balanced because we know it's unstable. Que mais?
Ele quer que
He wants to be
Well manipulated.
yeah,
Properly manipulated.
Ele quer que alunos adolescentes parem de achar que são coisas
He wants teenagers to stop thinking of them as child stuff.
Anything else from the puppets?
simplicidade na articulação.
I'm gonna draw this.
Voice.
Where is the puppet? The puppeteer's voice.
Voice.
Well treated.
Well treated, yeah.
Reverence.
Reverence. Let
Oh,
me
this
s-
is I'm translating well.
Okay.
Você.
Partnership.
Any more? 'Cause we should finish.
Respect. Give a little respect. Dialogue. Not simply be operated, to have a dialogue. He says he does things we can't. Já
Okay,
falou.
thank you. So we got two manifestos. We're going to share them with you.
Yeah.
We had one last question, but it's already answered.
Yeah, it's already. Shall we move to the last question?
I think so.
Okay, let's do it. Is directing for puppeteering?
Yes,
Definitely.
we finished. Thank you.
Bom, nós temos ainda alguns minutinhos. Eu gostaria de fazer um anúncio, estou vendendo. Não, não se alguém tiver alguma questão, eu acho que a gente pode abrir assim. Eu acho que umas 3 questões, eu acho que dá de bom tamanho, e depois a gente vê o tempo. O que vocês acham? Alguém tem alguma pergunta, assim, que não consegue se conter? Eu sei que todo mundo, né? Todo mundo gostaria de fazer perguntas.
Primeiro eu queria agradecer a forma como vocês conduziram a conferência de vocês. Acho que a gente precisa de mais leveza e dialogar e brincar e pensar o teatro de animação fazendo e se colocando. E essa metodologia que é um pouco caótica também, né? Isso eu achei maravilhoso. Enfim.
Essa parte foi menos planejada.
Eu achei incrível. Acho que tem que tirar a gente do lugar e flui. E eu queria... É uma das coisas que eu queria também ter perguntado para o DJ Plassar, que é algo que me mobiliza muito, assim, é em relação a esse aspecto de vida. Quando a gente não está necessariamente simulando uma vida antropomórfica ou zoomórfica, como pensar a vida no teatro de animação contemporâneo, onde nem sempre está sendo representado essas figuras humanas, animais, quando o material está posto à vista, está ali dialogando com o público, está ali dialogando com o animador, com a animadora, está dialogando com aquele outro corpo, que não é necessariamente uma pessoa que está manipulando, mas está jogando, está brincando, está dialogando e está comunicando, está fruindo, né? Está propondo. Então, é uma coisa que eu queria jogar para a gente discutir sobre esse aspecto da vida. O que é a vida no teatro de animação, que propõe essa ânima, mas que hoje a gente acho que tem mais para refletir e dialogar.
Well, I guess for me, it's partly about this question of reverence and love and believing that the spirits are amongst us in whatever the material is. And you can train in this. I mean, you can train in approaching material, in having this respect for the material. I suppose there's a question on top of that, though. I mean, I suppose there's a question about whether you want to suggest that the material is alive in a human form, in a sort of anthropomorphic form, which is not always the answer. But I think the same processes work, whether you're working with raw material like water or like clay or like fabric or like paper or figurative puppets. Even if you don't have a human anatomy, you're still approaching the material with this sense that there is some kind of, I'm not going to say life, but I'm going to say consciousness, that there is some kind of consciousness and some kind of intelligent consciousness within it. And I suppose this is the process of training and performance, is that you meet the material and you discover the material and you allow the material. The word manipulation comes up a lot with puppetry, and I'm just telling, this is, I'm not saying this is correct, I'm just telling you that 2 weeks ago, in my life, I abolished in my personal vocabulary the word manipulation. From a political and material and ecological consciousness, I'm not using it anymore. I'm only using animation or similar words. Manipulation, and I don't want to manipulate. So I think it's this sense of belief and training in this belief and in respecting the material, whatever that material can be.
Yeah. Eu vou falar em português. Tá? Tem umas questões que são assim. Quando a gente vai pensar sobre a questão da vida, eu acho que tem uma série de teoria desenvolvida, tem uma série de... Né? E talvez a gente deva, por um momento, deixar essa teoria um pouco de lado, né? E tentar estabelecer uma relação direta com o boneco com o qual a gente está lidando, com os bonecos que a gente assiste, com os espetáculos que a gente vê, e tentar fazer uma indagação direta ao que está acontecendo. Para mim, por hora, me parece que algumas questões chaves, e que foram faladas aqui nesse diálogo, sobretudo, podem ser trazidas como pontos de apoio. Eu acho que a primeira delas é a instabilidade, né? É o entendimento de que a vida do boneco ela é uma vida instável, ela é transitória, ela é diferente, ela tem uma fragilidade, uma força que emerge dessa fragilidade. E me parece que a outra percepção que pode ser interessante é essa ideia do mundo de onde o boneco vem, qual é a estrutura desse mundo, quais são as ordens desse mundo, e entender, né, que é uma ordem física de outra, é uma nova natureza. Então, né, então me parece que no momento essas sejam duas chaves interessantes de pensamento. Alexandre.
Durante a construção desses dois manifestos, em algum momento, vocês consideram que está contemplado aí o espectador como parte da alma desse fantasma, dessa vida que se tenta dar ao inanimado? Se durante a construção desses dois manifestos, em algum momento está contemplado o espectador como parte dessa energia que dá vida, que cria esse fantasma que anima o inanimado.
Do you mean that in addition to us, and in addition to you, the audience, this energy around was also part of this creation? Is that what you mean? No.
I guess I can say a bit about it, but I'll do it in Portuguese, if you don't mind. Eu acho, Alexandre, que tem duas questões. A primeira delas é a construção do manifesto em si, né? Então, de fato, nós dois, nesse momento, estamos no papel de provocadores e nós simplesmente recebemos dessa plateia específica aqui, que não é a plateia a qual você se refere, né, informações específicas a respeito do que deveria ser ensinado para diretores, né? Essa é a primeira questão, né? Ou seja, o manifesto é um manifesto aberto, ou seja, de certa maneira, a parte que nós temos na construção desse manifesto é de uma provocação que nós fazemos anteriormente, mas ele tá escrito exclusivamente com as palavras que foram lançadas a nós pela plateia. Essa é a primeira parte. Agora, a segunda parte que eu acho bastante importante e que deve ser levada em consideração, poderia ser uma pergunta completamente nova dentro desse diálogo que foi estabelecido, né? Que é justamente a gente levar em consideração a função do espectador nesse processo inteiro. E a função do espectador é absolutamente essencial. Eu acho que não se estabelece pacto ficcional, essa ilusão de criação de vida, sem o elemento do espectador dentro disso, né? Me parece que não é possível pensar o fenômeno teatral como alguma coisa que acontece independente da existência do espectador. Mas essa já é uma outra conversa, né? Tudo bem?
Sim, mas vocês consideram que está contemplado isso?
Não.
But can I say something as well? Is that a couple of things. First of all, the first manifesto really surprised me because I was really expecting the contents to be much more traditionally theatrical. So this list of things like humanity, empathy, patience came from somewhere, and I'm not quite sure why, because it was surprising, and that was why it was so interesting. And also, this is why we wanted to do the two manifestos, because what people say is not the same as what puppets say. And so the puppets said some other stuff, rather different, and that was really interesting too. And just to think about this idea coming from Merleau-Ponty, who said there are different kinds of consciousness. There's core consciousness, which is the sense of ourselves in our body as individuals, and we understand what is going on with us. And there's the kind of extended consciousness where we are not only ourselves, but we are others, or we are part of others too. And I wonder if some of that happened. But so was it contemplated? Not really, but we did think that the two manifestos would be different, and we did think that the puppets would say something different.
Bom, gente, a gente já está no nosso tempo. Eu acho que foi uma conferência riquíssima, que fez refletir muito. Gostaria de parabenizar o Mário e a Cariad por ter nos presenteado com essa conferência. Certamente a gente vai refletir muito e pensar em mais alguns itens para acrescentar no manifesto, ou sonhar com mais alguns itens. Então, eu preciso fazer alguns avisos importantíssimos. O primeiro deles é para todas aquelas pessoas que fizeram o seu check-in de voo, de retorno,